Welcome to this morning's meeting. Welcome to members of the public in the gallery and our petitioner and questioner as well. So item 1 on the agenda is apologies for absence. I have 2, Councillor David Jeffels and Councillor Bastiman. Councillor Bastiman would like me to make it clear to members that he's not here today because he's been asked by the leader to attend another meeting on behalf of North Yorkshire Council. Item 2, minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of September. Can I have everybody happy with those for accuracy? No problems. I will sign those accordingly. Thank you very much. Item 3 is declarations of interest. You're invited to think about the agenda today. If anybody's got any declarations of interest they need to make, I'm not aware of any. Are we all okay? Fabulous. Thank you very much. Item 4 is me again. Feedback from previous meetings. So apologies, I wasn't at the September meeting, but I understand there were a couple of issues raised that the committee had asked to add to the work plan. So empty home strategy. As you heard at the last meeting, council officers are currently working through that. So they're coming to this committee in June to give a full report. And we should have some numbers then about how many empty homes there are in our geography. And also in June, the community safety report will include an update on any issues associated, I can't even speak this morning, sorry, put my teeth back in, associated with HMOs, and regulation of HMOs will come to the committee at a later date. And finally, members will be aware that last year North Yorkshire Council convened a water quality summit involving all the various agencies involved in our water quality. Over the summer, there has been more detailed analysis and identification of sources of E. coli. Those reports and analysis have been carried out by the Environment Agency and Professor Glauc from Durham University, who is leading the pollution source study using nitrogen isotope analysis of seaweed samples. I actually even understand those words, but we will all understand those words soon because a consolidated report incorporating all the findings will be published in the next month or so. Following that publication and with the agreement and attendance of all the parties involved, so that's the Environment Agency, Yorkshire Water, Durham University, DEFRA, who would probably join online to be fair, and McCain's, who've been really supportive, the area committee will hold an additional special meeting to discuss those findings. At this stage, I cannot be specific about the date because I'm not in control of the publication of the consolidated report. But once that has been made public, then we can find a date that's acceptable for all of us. And St John will have the unenviable task of coordinating diaries with all those various agencies and finding a date for us to meet, hopefully in this council chamber. Hope everyone's agreeable to that. Yeah, it's something we said we would do, but it seems to have taken a lifetime to get to that point. No questions, sorry. And now we're on to public questions and statements. Firstly, Mr. Wakely, can I call you George? George, because I know you anyway. Please take a seat. So George has tabled a public question.
The committee please look into why Scarborough Pride is being charged upwards of £1,000 for parking services that were previously not charged.
Thank you. So I've got the reply from NYC. As you know, you've got an additional supplementary question you can ask. Thank you for your question regarding the Scarborough Pride event and the concerns raised about NYC raising charges for this. North Yorkshire Council recognises that Scarborough Pride is a cherished community event, brings significant cultural value to the town. We appreciate the dedication of the event organisers and the many volunteers who make this possible. As part of our ongoing review of fees and charges across the county, including those related to car park usage, we are mindful of the impact any changes may have on community-led events. The current scheme for Scarborough Spa car parks outlines standard charges that have been applied to cover the costs of these suspensions. However, we understand that under previous arrangements with Scarborough Council and also the last couple of years under North Yorkshire Council, events were not subject to those fees. We want to reassure you that North Yorkshire Council is committed to supporting volunteer-led initiatives and maintaining the goodwill that underpins events like Scarborough Pride. While the Council must ensure consistency and transparency in its charging policies, we are actively reviewing how best to accommodate exceptional community events within our framework, and Pride is an exceptional event. Your request to maintain the existing arrangements for the Scarborough Pride will be considered as part of this review. We will engage with relevant stakeholders, including the event organisers, to explore options that balance financial sustainability with community benefits. So that is the question we've had from North Yorkshire. If you have a follow-up question.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I don't have a follow-up one from that.
Right.
Thank you.
We will advise you when that review is completed. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. What are you doing? Councillor Swanwick or Councillor Trumper, question on Whitby whalebones? Councillor Wilder submitted a question. Shall I just read it out and go for it? Okay. This is from Councillor Linda Wild from Whitby Town Council. Can a reassurance be given that North Yorkshire Council are giving priority to the replacement of the whalebones in Whitby? The whalebones are a home and internationally renowned landmark. We are aware that very capably an officer is consulting with authorities in Alaska, but we just need assurance that NYC Council are supportive and totally behind the urgency of solving the problem. I have a really lengthy reply from Chris Bourne. I'll read the first bit out and then we'll circulate the rest, and I'll tell you for why when I get there. Chris Bourne, Head of Harbours and Coastal Infrastructure, provided the following reply. In June 25, Whitby Town Council formally asked North Yorkshire Council to undertake urgent investigations to the future of the whalebones in Whitby and provided costed options for replacement, refurbishment, protection, alternatives, e.g. a replica replacement. North Yorkshire Council takes any formal request seriously, and Whitby Town Council can be assured that the request is being progressed. An update was last provided to Whitby Town Council by email on the 12th of November 2025. So I do have that update. It is a page of A4. You are very welcome to listen to my dulcet tones reading it out to you, if you'd like me to do that, or I can circulate it via, St John will circulate it via email. Would you like me to read the reply that went to Whitby Town Council, or are you content with noting that Chris Bourne is on the case? Content with noting? In summary, he's talking to Alaska, he's talking to carriers, he's talking to other countries that may have whalebones available. The logistics are a nightmare and people are not getting back to him, hence the delay. However, I think it's really unlikely there would have been much of an update between the 12th of November and today. Don't take questions in. Oh, you've got the right. Are you assuming the right of a supplementary? Yeah, go on then.
All I was going to say was that I think both Councillor Trumper and I are fully up to speed on this issue because we've been involved in the discussions. But I also note that there is a report going to the next meeting of Whitby Town Council, which I assume is the report you have in front of you. Which
all I know is that he'd said he'd sent this report to Whitby Town Council for the 12th of November. When is the next Whitby Town Council meeting?
I'll defer to my colleague on that one.
Oh, yeah, you should know that. 9th of December. Again, we will reply to Chris. He's waiting for people to come back. I don't think there's a time delay in emailing Alaska, but there is a time delay in Alaska coming back to him. But I will make sure that he knows that. Okay. Right. Thank you very much. We are now on to item 6, and we're very happy to welcome our MP, Alison Hume. Alison, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I think the first thing I'd like to say is there might be a drama in the Whitby whalebones. Yeah, don't you think? Replacements from Alaska, or possibly not real whalebones. I think I need to make notes of that. Thank you very much, Chair. And I'm delighted to be here today. It's always a pleasure to come to the Scarborough and Whitby Area Committee. I look on it as a select committee and I really enjoy taking your questions. Thank you, first of all, to all the councillors in Scarborough and Whitby for supporting me in my work on behalf of my constituents since I last spoke to you. I really value your input and your advice, and I'm very grateful to you. So, as always, I'll keep my comments short so that it'll give you a chance for questions. Obviously, the big news this week was delivery of our second budget. I won't go into all of the top lines nationally, but just to say that we are beating the forecast with growth this year, upgraded to 1.5% from 1%. I've gone through the budget with regards to what I can tell you, what it will mean for Scarborough and Whitby, and the main news is that by removing the two-child benefit cap, we're expecting it to benefit an estimated 1,850 children living in households in our constituency. So I think that is brilliant news, and that comes on top of the expansion of free school meals. 4,000 children looking to benefit from that. In Scarborough and Whitby, we've got 6 schools, just to remind you, that have got funding for the Free Breakfast Club. That stays Seton Community, Horsker, Filingdale, St George's and St Peter's, and also funding has been given to St George's Primary School for a school-based nursery. So we're making really good progress in helping children in Scarborough and Whitby. The other headlines are, I think, of interest: supporting the long-term youth unemployed, an interesting offer there, guaranteeing 6-month work placement for 18 to 21-year-olds. Plans for opening 4 new youth hubs in Scarborough and the Humber region, and obviously I'll be lobbying for those to come to Scarborough and Whitby, well, maybe one of them at least. And then with what we were offering on the lowering the business rates, it looks like permanently lower taxes for around 16,670 retail, hospitality and leisure properties in North Yorkshire. I don't have any further breakdown of that, I'm sorry. And then the high value council tax surcharge to make sure that a house in Scarborough doesn't pay more than a £10 million mansion in Whitehall. So in North Yorkshire, less than 1% of residential properties are valued over 2 million. So there's various things. I think the other note, I've been lobbying quite heavily on the gambling side of things. It's actually good news for seaside towns. You probably picked up that remote gaming duty and general betting duties are going up, but that applies to remote and online betting. So betting in person is not affected, and also this that's really important for our businesses in Scarborough and Whitby in terms of being, on people in-person betting. And the other thing which has come about, which I'm pleased about, given that we've unfortunately seen the closure of Mecca Bingo, is that bingo duty, which is currently set at 10%, which will be abolished. And that's intended to support land-based bingo venues, which we look at as low risk and culturally important. And I am in conversation with the owners of Mecca Bingo and to see whether they can find another property to open in Scarborough. It's really important. I think we'll all agree, particularly for elderly people, that it's not just going out to play bingo. It's something that keeps them company and gives them a community. So I've also met with Baroness Twycross, as well as with the Bingo Association, talking to her about the sense that lower risk betting, such as bingo, needs to be separated from adult gaming centres, because we're seeing the adult gaming centres preying on coastal communities, and they're associated with higher harm in terms of gambling, as well as the societal impacts of having 24/7 adult gaming centres open. So there is a consultation to separate adult gaming centres away from other lower risk gambling. And also in the meeting I mentioned the importance of getting rid of the aim to permit from current legislation, and I'm hopeful that local authorities will be getting more powers to look at clusters. I'm not sure when that will come in, but the cumulative impact assessment, I think that'll be really helpful. So there's a few things from the budget, and if you want to ask me any more, I'll be happy to answer those questions. So just in brief, what I've been doing: open nearly 2,000 constituent cases were created between the 19th of September and the 24th of November. I've held 6 local surgeries and one public meeting on fracking. So fracking, it continues to be one of the big things that I'm working on. I've got a meeting with Michael Shanks, the Minister, next week, because obviously the Europa oil and gas application is coming before the council, and I'm asking the government for clarity on our position. We're going to be banning fracking going forward, but we need to make it crystal clear that this is all forms of fracking. It's the action of fracking, Chair, rather than the volume of water or any other chemical. It's a loophole, but unfortunately it's taking time to resolve this, and I realise that for my constituents it's a really, really worrying time, but I remain really optimistic that not only will main fracking be banned, but also prop and squeeze as well, and I can update you at the next time I see you regarding that. So fracking has been on my list. The other thing that I've been working on is progressing my campaign to improve stroke services for Scarborough. Presented a petition in Parliament for Scarborough Hospital to once again provide care to stroke patients. I've raised this with Health Minister Karen Smith. I've visited the HASU at York Hospital, and I'm writing to the National Stroke Director to ask him about the issue of stroke care in coastal communities. On the Langdale Moor fire, I'm working with the council and MPs to lobby government to ensure that farmers and businesses are compensated by wildfires in the same way that they're compensated by flooding incidents. Now, there is a grant scheme available to businesses affected by flooding, but there isn't a similar one for wildfire, and I'm talking to MHCLG about this. I did ask the Minister in the House whether they'd confirm that they would automatically consider triggering a national resilience response in future incidents where critical military infrastructure is under threat. Because of what I saw at RAF Fylingdales, I didn't get a positive response on that, but I'm going to continue lobbying on that one. Something else I've been involved in that councillors will be interested in, I'm sure, and thank you again for your support, Councillor Seston, with this, is over Eastfield Medical Centre. Flooding happened in the summer and then again in September, and it's been really catastrophic for the 10,000 patients in Eastfield. Following an intervention by myself and Minister Kinnock, things are moving now, and I'm really pleased to say that it looks like there are temporary clinical rooms coming available at a fitness centre in Eastfield, as well as support from St Cecilia's, St Catherine's. It's been brilliant. The community are really coming together, but it has actually really put a spotlight on what happens when there's a critical failure in primary services, and that's perhaps something that the area committee might want to look into going forward, because there's no doubt that constituents have suffered as a result of that. I think those are probably the headlines of what I've been doing on behalf of my constituents, many and various things going on, but I think one thing I'd like to mention actually is that I have been working with the council and talking to ministers about the fair funding review, and I'm particularly with regards to the cap on the school transport. So I'm happy to take any further questions on that. I think that's the summary, Chair.
Thank you. And busy time. In respect of the wider issues about this ICB's ability to respond to a crisis, we've added that to the scrutiny of health work plan, and I absolutely understand Eastfield is a real issue for us, but it could happen elsewhere, especially when we know we've got flooding issues in the Dales and wildfire issues. So scrutiny of health will be looking into what is the ICB's contingency planning and how do they do better than they did for our residents in Eastfield, because it's been appalling, and without people's interventions and constantly on the case, I'm confident that nothing would have happened. So thank you to everyone who's been involved in that. I have 6 people who've put their names down for questions, so we'll do them individually because I'm sure they'll all be on slightly different topics. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, Alison.
I'd like to thank you for your continued work to highlight the concerns around stroke provision for residents on the East Coast, including the petition you have submitted to the House of Commons and your recent visit to the York Hyperacute Stroke Unit. During your discussions with York, I understand a figure of around 350 stroke patients per year from Scarborough was referenced. However, it appears that this number does not include patients who present in Whitby or Bridlington and who also depend on the same service pathway. If those areas are included, the total number relying on an East Coast solution is clearly higher. Can you confirm whether you believe the quoted figure of 350 accurately reflects the real demand for the whole of the East Coast? And given what you have learned through your visit and constituency work, are you prepared to raise this issue directly with the relevant government minister in the near future to ensure that stroke provision for coastal residents is properly understood and urgently addressed? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so used to taking questions in threes. Thank you, Councillor Moore, and thank you for your support with this campaign. Yes, I can confirm that I don't believe that the quoted figure of 350 per year reflects accurately the true number of patients. I am prepared to raise it directly with the Minister in the future. I'm working on presenting, I think, an adjournment debate on stroke services on the North Yorkshire coast, and that will get a reply from a minister. And I believe strongly that there are many more patients that are not included in the figure, and I'm going to be writing to other hospitals to see what their data is. I'm on a data trawling exercise at the moment. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. Councillor Phillips, your question on wildfire. Is there anybody else's question on wildfire? Because I will take those two to get if there are more. No, just the one. That's fine. Thank you, Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Liz. I know, Alison, that you've been involved in various visits to the moor because obviously they've been on social media, so we know what's going on. But I'm more concerned about the people that were left behind, as it were. I've got a letter from Richard Flinton as the chairman of the local resilience forum, and it gives a very good précis of how unique this incident has been. We've got a site of significant ecological importance combined with unexploded ordnance. That's never going to be a good thing. We've got very, very ancient areas that have been managed by the estates for hundreds of years in some cases, and other bodies have taken it as they've changed the way they've been managed lately. So I think we need to look at the impact of that. Is it going to be a problem in future? And we've got businesses which are being told they have to wait to get support. I know that you've started lobbying, but can we be confident as your local constituents that you will continue to be so, and that fire and flood are just as devastating? That one is no less of a problem than the other. I mean, that one of the lines in this letter comes back to me. It says, together we are supporting people, businesses and communities impacted physically, financially, and in some cases mentally by the unprecedented Fylingdales Moor fire. Can you assure us that you will be lobbying the various departments? Because at the moment, being told that North Yorkshire should be footing the bill isn't going to work because we don't have the resources, and we don't think morally that people in North Yorkshire should pay the bill for such a massive incident. It's a nationally significant incident. So what's going to happen next? Thank you.
Councillor Phillips, it really pleases me to be able to say I agree with every single word that you said. You can absolutely rely on me to carry on lobbying. I am lobbying all the time. I've been personally affected by the stories that I've heard from the farmers. I am completely on your side. I think we've just exposed a failure in the grant system. It's never been set up because of the way that climate change has come so fast that there isn't a pathway for grants for businesses affected by wildfires. There is for flooding, and if there's a precedent there, then there should be for wildfire, and indeed all other sorts of climate emergencies that are coming our way and will impact us as a community. So I am lobbying, as I say. I've written and I'm having conversations. I'm going out with the farmers again, I think next week, for a tour to see the affected area, talk to more farmers that I didn't speak to. And then I'm holding a coffee morning to thank firefighters and farmers in Horsker in December. It's not, that sounds performative, but it isn't, because it means that I can have those conversations and can really hear from people from the first coffee morning. It really did inform what I needed to ask and lobby for. The devil is in the detail. I thought it was a very good letter from Richard, and I know that people are depending on people in public office to get the help that is needed. And I understand that North Yorkshire Council don't feel that they should be footing the bill, but I would say that if there's any kind of money in the coffers for to help in the short term for the most seriously affected, perhaps the council could look at it. But I do understand it's a government issue. I am lobbying, and I will continue to do the best for my constituents. Thank you for your question.
Councillor Chance.
Yes, good morning, Alison. Alison, on the Burniston fracking situation, my understanding is that if the application comes before NYC at the moment, given the current legislation, there is probably no reason to refuse it. Let's put it that way. Is it possible that the Minister can look at this prior to that meeting and call it in? Because that would solve a problem for everyone. Maybe not the Minister, but.
And thank you, Councillor Chanson. It's great to see you back in the chamber for this committee meeting. I have already had that conversation with Minister Shanks. I believe it's probably the only minister can call it in will be Steve Reed from MHCLG. I've got a meeting with Michael next week and I'll raise it again. I understand the critical timeline. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? Is the strategic planning date for this set? Not yet, right. So we have a little time. Thank you. Councillor Broadbent. Eric.
Thank you, Chair. Alison, I believe that you are aware that there is talk of a tourist tax for Scarborough and Whitby regards residents that stay overnight. And I was just wondering, the question really is, do you agree with our North Yorkshire Mayor that any monies raised could be spent on better road infrastructure to the coast, or do you believe any money raised should be spent on Scarborough and Whitby residents? Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Councillor Broadbent, for that question. So, yes, in the budget, powers have been given to the mayors to levy a tourist tax, but the detail hasn't been worked out as yet. My view very strongly is that this needs to be approached with caution and with full kind of transparency and conversations with the hospitality industry. In effect, a simple levy transparently raised is a good idea. However, and I've said this and I'll say it again, it's really important that any taxes raised locally in Scarborough and Whitby, let's face it, Scarborough, Whitby and the villages are the crown in North Yorkshire's tourism crown, the jewel in the crown, and we need to see the money spent here. I think if it's raised locally and spent locally, that may include transport to and from the coast to major, perhaps York. I'm thinking more in terms of trains and buses than roads, I have to say. But 50 million projected is a lot of money when you consider the mayoral fund in total that they get is 18 million. It is, as David Scaife says, a game changer. So I think there needs to be a lot of conversations. I'm not opposed to it in principle, but I think raised locally, spent locally, and we need to really make sure it's not swallowed up in a combined authority pot.
Thank you. Councillor Swanwick, Neil.
That's appropriate, because my question is also, Chair, on the subject of the tourism tax, or the proposed tourism tax, which was at the same time announced at the same time as the budget. So I think it's relevant to our discussions. I think we're all trying to digest what that possibly means and evaluate whether we support it or not, and on what conditions we might support it. I think probably all of us would sympathise with Councillor Broadbent's position on that we need to know where the money's going to go before we give it our full endorsement. But I must say I'm cautiously supportive of the idea. But there is one possible anomaly which I think will be of concern to my residents in Whitby, and that is that collecting the tax will be easy for hotels. That's done throughout Europe, to my knowledge, but not so easy for short-term lets. And this brings me back to a question which I've been raising with you now for on several occasions, and at the time of the consultation by the last government on dealing with short-term lets, there were two parts to the consultation. One was on changing the use classes to create a new use class for short-term lets. The other was by DCMS to register all the short-term lets that were already in existence. And my understanding is that was sort of given the go-ahead. It didn't need further legislation. But that would seem to me to be invaluable in terms of assessing a tourism tax for short-term lets. And I don't know whether the ball is in the court of local authorities on this, or whether it's in the court of national government. But nonetheless, I think that if the hotels are to be able to see fair play done, then I think there has to be a mechanism for taxing short-term lets as well. And I think that would be popular in Whitby.
Thank you, Councillor Swanwick. I look forward to your regular question on Airbnb. I agree with you that, and I should have said actually in my sort of support in principle for the levy, is that it has to be applied to everybody, not just hotels, but Airbnbs and anybody else providing accommodation. And I think there will be primary legislation needed for the levy. And in a way, I think it will actually help move things along for the registration and the licensing, because how are they going to do it if they don't have the information? And I'm one of a group of MPs that are talking to government about short-term lets, as you'd imagine. And this is exactly the data collecting exercise that I think that we need in order to be able to levy everybody equally. So I think it will happen. I think that the registration must happen sooner than we thought, in order for the levy to go ahead. So I think perhaps we're moving in the right direction. Fingers crossed.
Thank you. Roberta? And then I've got some late arrivals. So Roberta is not a late arrival.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, Alison. Well, you've answered more or less what I was going to ask, and that is obviously Eastfield Medical Centre. It's been a long time, and what a lot of my residents have now changed doctors, and you wonder long term if that was the wise thing to do. But at that point, they have gone anywhere and everywhere to get a consultation done. I would think at the end of September, I offered through the parish council 2 halls for flu injections. I met with the manager at the Eastfield Medical Centre. She came and had a look at both halls, said they were absolutely fine. But I must find the people who were registered with Eastfield, who were eligible for the injection, and they could only do the flu. But to arrange for a nurse to do it would take 3 weeks. I'm still waiting for that to be done. And I just find my worry is that I think the vulnerable people, and we've got an elderly population in our villages. Osgoby, the area I represent, a massive amount of elderly people, and I can't help but think that some of these people will think, well, this year I'll not bother, I'll manage. It might not happen. To me, they're the most vulnerable ones, because if it does, they're going to be rushed in if they're lucky, but also they're going to cost the National Health further down the line. And to me, for a simple injection, that we were offering rooms any time, any day, I feel like we've been sort of thrown out. And I think the residents seem very angry, as they will be. I don't go to that surgery, but the ones that do are exceptionally angry. You know, I've got a gentleman and his wife. She's terminally ill. He's got Parkinson's, can't drive. I often go and get their prescriptions, but they'll ring me when they're desperate because the centre is not getting these prescriptions to the chemists or anywhere or delivering them. So I'm glad you're on it, but it seems to have been an awful long time from it happening to actually now moving somewhere. There seems to have been a gap of about 4 months when actually nothing was done. Would you agree with that?
Well, thank you, Councillor Swires. It has been quite sobering to realise that there's been a failure of senior management across the ICB, SSP, who run the GP services, and Assura, the landlords. As I've dug deep into it, it's become obvious that the fantastic practice manager, Tammy, and her deputy, Wendy, have been really trying to sort everything out to do with the flood as well as providing a service. And I hear what you say about coming forward and offering, and I'm sure, and I can't speak for Tammy and Wendy, but it will have been some reason to do with it not being achievable that they haven't taken you up on your request, but I will mention it to them. I think, as Councillor Colling has said, it's going to be something that you're going to look into going forward as to why there was such a big gap. And really, you know, it's not the role of an MP to step in and get involved in these things, really, but it is in the way I needed to speak up for my constituents, so that's why I did. So thank you for everything that you're doing. I do believe that some vaccines have been delivered using the Happy Futures location, but I'll certainly raise that. But I have said it on record, and I've said it again, that this has been a failure of senior management across the board. Everybody else thought that everybody else was doing it, and nobody was. And when I visited the Eastfield Medical Centre, the drying out hadn't even started because of held-ups with the insurers. So it's a sad and sorry situation. That's why I've rolled up my sleeves and got involved on behalf of my constituents. And I do know that people are suffering, and that's why I've given it so much of my time, and I'll continue to do that. And while, if I've got your permission, just to update you on after the Ask Alison at Caton, which you kindly came and supported me at, I've had a conversation with Persimmon Homes about their plans, and I'd like, if I have got time afterwards, to talk to you about that, and also Yorkshire Water. So I haven't forgotten about the things that I said about that, and it's very much on my list. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
I've got 4 more, but can I ask Councillor Seston, was it related to Eastfield Medical Practice? If not, I'll take you in sequence if that's okay then. Yep, that's fine. Councillor Trumper.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Alison, for your report this morning and attending again. Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned the budget in your report, and you mentioned that Scarborough Whitby are dueling the crown of North Yorkshire, which I agree completely about Whitby and Scarborough.
Nicely done.
But I mean, Whitby has benefited from that extra footfall over many years, and being able to employ people over the quieter periods when traditionally businesses would close in September. But with the measures in the previous budget, and I think the measures in this recent budget, some of those businesses are now having to close because of the extra cost on them. Which is disappointing, really, because obviously they can't afford to stay open, and that is basically making people unemployed again for their winter period. So, is there anything the government can do to reverse that?
Thank you, Councillor Trumper. And obviously I'm well aware of the impact of the first budget and the national insurance contributions, which I think you're referring to. And, you know, I can only say that in order to stabilise the economy and try and boost growth, we've had to make some tough decisions and ask everybody to pitch in for that. But I would say in terms of the businesses, I think that the permanently lower business rates will surely help. And also the ability to take on apprentices with providing funding for small and medium enterprises to take on apprentices free of charge. And I think that will really help bring new people into businesses. I do understand what you're saying, but I think that the investment into young people and lowering business rates will hopefully help.
Thank you. Councillor Chance again.
It's just coming back on the second home situation and the lets. Can I just say, Alison, that the method of booking a second holiday accommodation is through agencies, and I think it would be wrong if they went down the line of registering every let individually and trying to collect the money, because the individual owners don't collect the money themselves. It's got to be done through the agencies, and I would ask you to bear that in mind when discussions.
Thank you very much. I will take that on board. Thank you, Councillor Chance.
Okay. Councillor Jefferson.
Thank you, Alison, and thank you for taking a sort of I would say, in principle, look at this, what was previously called a bed tax, which caused a lot of problem when it was going to be introduced a few years ago. I welcome with regard to the Airbnbs, because they cause an awful lot of unrest because of the fact of not paying any rates in the first place. But as you know, I'm president of the Chamber of Trade and Commerce, and as such, I attend the Tourism Advisory Board, and I was really sad to hear from the President of Hospitality that a lot, due to increased regulations, that a lot of the small guest houses are probably going to close. Because one of the big things, and I think Councillor Trumper alluded there, how people all close in September for winter. The reason that is, and I'm sure Alison will be aware of it, is the VAT threshold. Because that really needs consideration by the government to raise the threshold, because people can't stay open all year on the sceptical thing that they might turn over another 30,000 to cover the VAT. But it is affecting an awful lot of these small businesses, and they can throw the towel in. You know, it's not easy. Not a lot of people realise that this is why they actually do close. The other thing, which is also a worry to me, is, and you'll also be aware of it, Alison, is I think it's 140-day letting rule, which people with second homes use in order, to get a living out of it. And this it's going to be very difficult for you to resolve some of this. But that's how I feel about it. I mean, I get quite mad when I see people who are staying in Airbnbs putting their rubbish in the bin, but probably it's best them sticking it on the road. But it annoys me that some people, I'll admit I get rate relief in with my business, but I do buy the bags to put my waste in. But I think somewhere along the line we've got to get to these people and realise that they can't have everything for nothing. But I'm sceptical about the instigation of this bed tax, because again, it'll just probably affect the same people. And as you say, if we approach it cautiously, consult, because I know it'll come to us at the Chamber, it'll come to the hospitality, as to what the money will be used for. And I agree with Councillor Broadbent. I think they would want to see it being invested within the towns of Scarborough and Whitby. I mean, we had the bids situation, which in principle would have worked if it had just been concentrated on, say, Scarborough and Whitby. But Redcas, the Spurn Point, meant it was so diluted and it's caused so much trouble. And, we maybe could think of something like that everybody could contribute. But as I say, the VAT threshold is one thing to me that we should look at if the government can. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Jefferson. I'll take on board the VAT threshold and have a think about that. Also, the letting rule. Just to say, I have dealt with quite a lot of cases of antisocial behaviour over the last few months due to Airbnbs, and that does concern me. And I think that the discussions around the impact on coastal communities, particularly, or tourism hotspots of Airbnb with antisocial behaviour is something that with our fellow MPs, we're becoming increasingly concerned about, and that will also feed into the debate. I think that the whole hospitality approach and with the tourism levy will probably bring a lot of the things that we're talking about into under the spotlight, and it will be a useful chance for us to discuss lots of the issues that affect us. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Seston next. Before I tell him he's the last question, is anybody got anything else they wish to ask our MP before we let her go? In which case, Councillor Seston, Tom, you are the last question.
Yep, thank you, Chair. Firstly, thank you, Alison, for work on Eastfield Medical Centre. It's, thank God for Jamie Millard to step in and help us in that way. That's been invaluable. The question I want to ask is in relation to situations with the farm tax. I've spoken to a friend of mine who works in a farm. I think it's in Seymour Division, or Derwent, that neck of the woods. He attended a protest in Whitehall on Wednesday on Budget Day. The protest at the last minute was that their permission was revoked by the Metropolitan Police. I'm wondering if you think that was the correct thing to do. But leading on to sort of part two of the question, he fortunately wasn't arrested, but if he had been, do you believe he has the right to a trial by jury?
Thank you very much, Councillor Seston. I'm just trying to work out the logic of that question. Yeah, I'm aware, because my bus to Parliament was diverted, that there was a protest and then it didn't happen. I believe practically that was due to the large amount of tractors, but I don't know. But I would obviously always support anybody's right to protest peacefully. I can't comment on the logistics of that particular protest. And as you know, the government are considering bringing in trials without jury to do something about the desperate backlog of cases. I don't know enough about the situation to comment on that, except to say that everybody has the right to a fair trial. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. Thank you, Alison, for your time again, and thank you for your openness and frankness and honesty in answering all our questions. And I've made a couple of notes to think about what we might add to the work plan as well. So thank you very much indeed. Are you very welcome to join us for the rest of the meeting in as much time as you've got? Thank you. Elizabeth, would you like to come? So we are now on to item 7, and according to the time I have on my sheet, we are almost on schedule, which will be a first for me because I'm not really very good at timekeeping. So this is a petition urging North Yorkshire Council to reduce the speed limit from 40 miles an hour to 30 miles an hour on Newbridge Whitby, and I welcome Elizabeth Mulheron to present her petition.
Thank you very much, Chair. As I'm sure most of you are aware, Newbridge is on the A171. It connects the east and west sides of Whitby. The bridge is situated high above the Esk, where it can be extremely windy. There are currently no safety measures in place, such as verges or raised curbs. There's lots of heavy traffic, including HGVs on the bridge, potentially travelling at 40 miles per hour. Many local pedestrians have to use the bridge to access school and jobs, in spite of not feeling particularly safe. In addition, because of safety fears, some local residents choose to use their cars. This 40 mile an hour speed limit therefore discourages people from active travel. In 2024, the secondary schools in Whitby were amalgamated. and now all secondary education takes place on the west side. This means that children are having to walk across the bridge unaccompanied every morning and afternoon in order to access their education. In addition, parents and children use this bridge to get to Airy Hill Primary School. A 40-mile-per-hour limit shows a lack of regard for children's safety. Myself and a number of friends took this petition to the parents and staff at 2 local primary schools, Airy Hill and East Whitby Academy. In addition, we asked local people in town to sign. The support for the petition was absolutely overwhelming, and there is understandably a very strong desire to get the speed limit lowered to 30 miles per hour. A number of local residents and members of Whitby and Esk Valley Active Travel have written to me. Ian Suckling quite rightly states in his email, the speed survey planned will not allay parental fears about children walking and cycling to school. They see the risks and the lack of any measures to control speed. And Andy Jefferson has pointed out the Department of Transport's guidance document setting local speed limits 2024, which states the minimum length of a speed limit should generally be not less than 600 metres. This stretch of road is 475 metres. As a result, the 40-mile-per-hour speed limit contravenes the Department of Transport's guidance. I know there are cost implications, but these will be limited to signage. There is already adequate lighting. This is a real opportunity for the area committee and North Yorkshire to do something positive for the residents of Whitby and particularly its children. Thank you.
Thank you. And in keeping with the Constitution, we can debate that petition for 15 minutes. You can see there's a note in the papers that the highway area manager has committed to carrying out a speed survey once the traffic signals at the Spittal Bridge are operational. They're expected to be functioning by early December, which means a speed survey could take place when schools have gone back, which I think is critical in early New Year. But obviously we can debate that and any other options we might like to consider. So I've got Councillor Chance and Councillor Swanwick. David.
Thank you, Chair. The first thing I'd say is that the petition is actually contradictory to the policy of the council, and the council policy is that there should be 20-mile-an-hour speed limits outside schools. So I would be advocating 20 miles an hour on that stretch of road. It is a very dangerous road. You've got children morning and afternoon going up and down there. As the speaker quite rightly says, there is no verge at all. And the other thing I would say is that I understand what the area manager has said about assessing it, but actually to put in a temporary emergency limit, they can do that for 18 months without an assessment. So I would suggest that that is what we look at as an area committee, 20 miles an hour, and ask the area road manager to look at it as a temporary, leading forward to a full assessment at a later date. I think it's very important.
I think you're a mind reader. Thank you. Councillor Swanwick and then Councillor Trumper.
Thank you, Chair. As the councillor representing the Whitby Strenshaw division in which this bridge falls, I have to say I totally support the petition. In fact, I did sign the petition as well, which is unusual. I don't sign all that many petitions. And I think it's absolutely right. I have raised this issue previously with highways officers at the time of the planning for the new signalisation of the junction at Spittal Bridge and Larpool Lane, I proposed that a reduction in the speed over the new bridge be incorporated into the design of the new junction. The argument that was put back to me by the local area manager was that it would be more appropriate to do that after the work had been completed on the junction. Now, I still think it would have been better to incorporate that work into the thinking on the new junction as well, earlier on, before rather than after, but that's where we are. In terms of what we can do about it, the petition suggests that we have powers as an area committee to make some decisions in this respect. I just wonder whether officers could advise what powers we have and whether we could actually make a decision here today.
Advise that we can't make a decision to say it's 20 miles an hour. We can make a decision to write directly to the portfolio holder for highways, Malcolm Taylor, who knows the area very well, having been a former serving police officer in our location, and demand, I'll probably say request when we email, that we introduce a 20 mile an hour zone, and we'll come on to the detail of that after I take Councillor Trumper's question.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think the new junction will make a huge difference to the speeds coming over the new bridge from Mayfield Road. I think it's going to slow everything down, really. I mean, it's always been an anomaly, really, why you have a 30 mile an hour zone and then immediately going to 40 miles an hour. It's never made sense. So bringing it down to 30 miles an hour makes sense, and I agree with the petition on that basis. In regards to 20 miles an hour, I think it's the area committee would have to vote on that, would we, to make that recommendation
when we've taken all the questions.
Yeah, but yeah, it makes sense to bring it down, and I do think that the traffic lights at Spittle Bridge might reduce speeds even further. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with those traffic lights.
Thank you. And Councillor Swires?
I had to come in, sorry. I do fully support this. Don't live in the area, but do know how busy that particular bridge is at all times. I spent 4 years trying to get 20 mile an hour around Caton School. This February, I got an email to say, yeah, I totally agree with Councillor Chance. I thought all schools should have 20 mile an hour around them, particularly busy roads, hectic roads. We encourage a lot of our children to go to school on cycles because it's healthier, it's less traffic. However, they can't because of the danger, as you've pointed out. I was told that we'd got the 20 after doing surveys, etc., which I was delighted with. When it didn't happen, I questioned it. I was told that the funding wasn't there. We'd have to wait for funding. I think this is rather a shame because, to be honest, I don't think there is much funding needed. It's not a massive thing to put a 20 mile an hour sign and the markings to go with it. And if it saved one life, then I think it's absolutely essential. So after this, I will be going back to the portfolio. I've already asked, I'll be going back, but I fully support this. It is needed.
Thank you. So before I move on to what I think might be a proposed recommendation from us, can I just sense check, is everyone in favour of reducing that speed limit on that road? I've heard everyone say so. Have a show of hands, that would be really helpful. You can.
Clarity, does the petitioner prefer a 20 or a 30 miles per hour speed limit?
The petition preferred 30, but I think that was because we thought 20 would be pie in the sky, so and too big a jump. So yeah, we would, if you want to go for 20, we're more than happy with that.
Okay, thank you. So in February of this year, the council announced a review into speed limits outside all 400 educational sites which began at the end of 2024, starting with those where speeds are highest. The council has adopted a presumption of lowering speed limits in these and other locations, and it seems that this particular road is at the bottom of the list, so they're working their way through. So we've just had a brief discussion on what our powers might be, and my suggestion is that if we believe this is urgent and important, and this picks up what Councillor Chance said, we can write to the portfolio holder and ask them to put an experimental traffic regulation order in place fairly quickly. And we've experienced this because we've done it with not opening a can of worms, but we've done it with camper vans. So we could put an experimental traffic order in place that would operate quickly, and using that period of time that order is in place, the 18 months, we can do the necessary consultations and the necessary work, the traffic regulation order, to make that change permanent. So that is my proposal. Can I have a seconder? And can I have a show of hands in favour? And that is fabulous. I'd like to thank you so much for bringing that to our attention, because I'm sure the council would have got round to looking at the speed limit, but it would have been a while away. And I think this is urgent, as you've all described it.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you, members. That was great. I see somebody's had a comfort break. So before I call Louise, does anybody else require a comfort break? I'll look the other way if you think you do. Louise, would you please come? It's all right. Yeah, I'll tell you what. We are now on to item 8 of our agenda. I'd like to welcome Louise Wallace, Director of Public Health, who's here in person to present her report. We've got some colleagues online, Jenny Thompson from Public Health, Laura Young from Public Health, and Dr. Jill Kelly, Public Health Consultant. And we have Matthew Joseph, who's known to many of us from Scarborough Council. Hello again, Matthew, nice to see you. And he's here for the Community Participation Officer, particularly about the SWIFT programme, if there are any questions on that. Right, shall I just hand over to you then, Louise?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and morning, members. As Chair has already said, I'm Louise Wallace, Director of Public Health, but I think I know most members, if not all members in the room, through the various work that we do in public health throughout the year. I think this is now an annual event, which I really welcome to come to this committee to talk about health inequalities, because we know from our data that some of the more significant health inequalities are actually in this area constituency committee, notwithstanding other parts of the county that do have health inequalities, such as Selby and even parts of Harrogate. What I've tried to do in the slide deck is give you a general picture rather than a granular detail of data for each of the areas within the constituency committee. It does cover Scarborough and Whitby, because that's the brief of this committee. But of course, members, if there's anything that you'd want to know more about from your own areas, I can see with the data team whether I can drill down even further. But this presentation this morning, I think, is to give you a flavour of the issues that we're dealing with, and of course, most importantly, what we're doing about it. So I've tried to follow a similar format to last year, but just remembering that public health does work across not just improving the health of the population and trying to address health inequalities, but of course protecting the health of the population. And at any one day of the week, we could have an issue where we do need to work with colleagues in the UK Health Security Agency. We work with colleagues in the NHS to mobilise a response to potentially a health protection incident that might threaten the health of the public. And they're sometimes predictable, but not always, and we just need to respond. But a lot of our other work is more planful and intentional in terms of the work that we've got here to sort of talk to you about. So I'm just giving you a flavour this morning of some of the things that matter to the health of people in our coastal communities. And of course, I'd want to start by saying that if you remember Professor Sir Chris Whitty's annual report into coastal health back in 2021, it was important to recognise the assets that our coastal communities have and not just always focus necessarily on the deprivation. We have an amazing coastline with some fantastic assets, not least the bright sort of day to day where you could be out walking and accessing what is a fantastic geography and communities that live in our coastal communities. So really thinking from a position of what we've got between us that we can really work in partnership with. Just sending a little trail there because I'm about to bring to executive the Director of Public Health annual report, which is my annual responsibility, statutory responsibility, to present to members and to the public around the issues for public health. And this year it's a much broader partnership report. So hopefully when you get that report in December, you'll be able to read across to some of the wider work that we're doing. And of course, quite a lot of our work is county-wide, but we do focus and put more energy and effort into areas where we need to address health inequalities. That's a rather long preamble, Chair.
That's absolutely fine. I was just concerned about noise levels, but thank you. So your report comes in sections, as you said,
It does.
as we did last year. Can we take questions at each section?
Yes, that would be helpful.
And that's really helpful to us to focus our minds as well.
That'd be really helpful.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. So if I just whip through the first couple of slides, St John, if that's okay. So very well rehearsed in this committee in terms of our population and our demographic and thinking about, and it was really topical last year with the Director of Public Health annual report.
Just excuse me, Lou. Sorry, I just
So just looking at our population across this area committee, we do see that increase in older people living in coastal communities, and of course we reflected that in the annual report last year, and perhaps fewer younger people staying in this area or being born and brought up in this area. And of course we really want to encourage people to come and live and stay and work and be in this part of the county because it is such a great place to be. But that is our population pyramid. So of course our planning assumptions, things that we're thinking about from a public health point of view, we think about in the context of the population that we see. So I'm sure members are very, very well aware of their own populations, but just a graph to sort of show that again. So if we just move down, please, St John. And then thinking about life expectancy, so that's quite a typical public health measure, isn't it? How long do we live and what that inequality gap is. And relatively speaking, in North Yorkshire, we have pretty good life expectancy compared to other parts of the country. But that's not always true for the coastal communities, where we do see health inequalities and we do see people with shorter life expectancy. And I suppose one of the most important things is not just the length of life that you live, but the quality of that life lived, which is why we really want to make sure that we understand healthy life expectancy and how people report that they feel about their health and well-being, and that really matters from a public health perspective. But recognising in the data we do see that life expectancy and inequality gap played out through length of life and years lived. Next one, please. And then thinking about deprivation, the map speaks for itself. We do know we've got areas of deprivation in our in data for this area based upon indices of deprivation. We can drill further down to lower super output area, middle super output area if members would want that after the meeting for particular issues. But just to say that I wanted to just show that visually for you this morning, just to remind ourselves of where our inequalities are. But of course, we do have rural communities as well, and just those issues that affect coastal communities can be quite multi-layered, and the deprivation piece just sort of shows that our inequalities for North Yorkshire tend to be concentrated in this fantastic geography. Next down, please. And then employment and housing, again, thinking about how we compare this area in relation to the North Yorkshire average. We do see, different stats here that perhaps our area here is in a worse position perhaps than the rest of the county, but that's not to say that there's not opportunities and things that we can do. So again, just wanted to illustrate that. We talked, I think, last year at Area Committee about renting and about numbers of rents around this area in the county, and particularly for older people as well, with our healthy ageing agenda that we had in the DPH annual report, and of course house prices. So just wanted to give you a bit of a flavour of the data about the things that matter to people, the homes that they live in, the employment status, the life expectancy, the quality of those years lived, just to recontextualise and remind ourselves about the next set of slides, which are really about what we're doing to support people and address health inequalities. So we just move down, please. And the wider determinants. And you hear public health people talk all the time about the wider determinants because they really matter. It really matters about having a job, having a warm, dry home, having friends and a community and things that you can do in your life. This is all pretty well rehearsed, and strong evidence around that actually makes a big contribution to your health and well-being and your life chances and opportunities. But I know as elected members and MP in the room, this is stuff that you absolutely know and advocate for your populations every day of the week. My job is just to speak to the evidence and to remind committee about the importance of these wider determinants, and not least helping people to be in work, stay in work, and make sure they've got sufficient income to have a good quality of life. So moving down. I'm now going to hand over, if this is okay.
Listen, take your question. Yeah, I think there are a couple. I've got a couple, and Councillor Chance and Councillor Swanwick have. So my first one's on the slide, remain about projection of our population and the decrease in 0 to 19-year-olds. We know that a lot of young people leave our area for education and employment, but is that figure reflective of a falling birth rate as well, or is it actually net movement away from the area?
It's probably a combination of both, but there is that net movement away from the area, I think, and want economic growth to be, and opportunities and jobs to be the thing that want to help people to want to stay in this area. So it's probably a combination of both. I've got a nice nod from the public health consultant who leads on children's services on the board, on the screen, who has just nodded at me. So I'll take that as a that's right.
Okay, I'll keep ploughing on with mine. I hope I'm not pinching anyone else's. And when we talk about life expectancy and healthy life expectancy, what are the biggest drivers of unhealthy life? So is it cardiovascular disease? Is it arthritis? What sort of things are they?
So for North Yorkshire, pretty much like other places, it's respiratory, it's cardiovascular disease. We've seen more people with dementia, of course, across the county. All of those sort of physical illnesses that people perhaps die from earlier than other parts of the country. And I think the important bit is that other one around quality of life lived, which was your healthy life expectancy indicator, which I think is much broader than just our physical health, and thinking about what the people's lived experiences in our geography. So that is the predominantly what you usually see in my public health annual reports about the things that we usually die earlier from.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So I've got Councillor Chance, Councillor Swanwick, Councillor Ritchie, Councillor Trumper, and Councillor Trumper. So shall we do those in pairs? Is that all right? Councillor Chance and Councillor Swanwick first. David?
Yeah, it's just on There's no page number, so it's on the employment housing. Louise, you say that the average house prices for Scarborough and Whitby are 228. I'm well aware that you couldn't buy a one-bedroom flat in some places in Whitby for 228. So is that an average?
Yeah.
And if so, do you know what the average price is for Whitby?
I haven't got that with me, but I can find that out.
Yeah.
And certainly bring it to you.
It would be interesting to know what it is for Whitby and the surrounding area.
Yeah.
Because I know it's not 228 by any means.
Probably higher. Yeah. I can certainly ask the team to break that down, and that was my point at the beginning. I can ask the team to look at the data in a more granular level for different communities.
Councillor Swanwick.
Yes, thank you, Chair. When I looked through the presentation, the big issue that jumped out at me, I have to say, from your charts and your statistics, was suddenly to see Whitby a mass of red on your deprivation chart. And I have to say, that's maybe because I haven't done my homework adequately, because I've still been working from the indices of deprivation from 2019, in which, to my knowledge, there were, I'm getting some nods from them. Yes, exactly. Yes, yeah. But previously, as I understand it, there were two super output areas in Whitby that were within the bottom two deciles of deprivation, one on the west and one on the east side. And it seems as though that red mass has sort of swollen to take over most of central Whitby. Now, as we know, I mean, Whitby is in many ways a very successful town. It's a centre for tourism. People come from all over the world to come to Whitby, but there is that degree of poverty there which people don't necessarily recognise, and certainly I don't think North Yorkshire Council adequately recognises it. In effect, on all the statistics for North Yorkshire, it homogenises Whitby, and so that and Scarborough as well, so that it actually appears much less deprived than it is. And I think we should be pushing that point in all sorts of aspects, particularly in terms of funding, where people need to take note of that. Ironically, I have to say I was looking for a massive red for Scarborough, and that seems to have actually diminished. So you must be doing some good things in Scarborough to reduce the deprivation. Could I just add one more comment in, Chair, while I've got the floor, and that is that I have been lobbied by a very strong advocate for Whitby, shall we call her, who has written to myself and Councillor Trumper yesterday, drawing our attention to the fact that there is a little bit of lack of clarity, shall we say, about what is the area that we're talking about. And it seems that in some cases Scarborough is used as shorthand for Scarborough and Whitby. And I know I've asked this question before, that there is a question of coterminosity with other boundaries. And one of the questions is that NHS seems to have a boundary which is called the Scarborough locality. I think that was the answer last time, which I think includes Whitby, but doesn't in most people's eyes. So I've said my bit on that while I've got the opportunity, but I will forward that letter to the clerk, because the clerk goes through all the examples right the way through the presentations by yourself and others in the health sector, drawing attention to the fact that Whitby doesn't get the special treatment that it needs.
Can I just come back?
Yeah, of course.
I think I might have been copied into that yesterday, if it was yesterday's correspondence, and I'm more than happy to respond directly to the group and copy you back in if that helps.
Past comment on the deprivation in Scarborough, that doesn't look any better than it's looked before.
Okay.
I do notice, though, that it seems to be in old ward boundaries from a lifetime ago. Or there might be super output areas, actually, to be fair, but that doesn't look any better. And I cannot believe that it's got any better in the light of the issues that we've all got. You can clearly see Eastfield, you can clearly see my division that looks a bit like a map of South Africa, and you can see, or Africa should I say, and then you can see all the old town and Barracliff very, very clearly indeed. So I don't think there's been any improvement, sadly. But there we go. These things are notoriously difficult to shift, aren't they? And I'm sure we'll get onto that. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Chair. In fact, you almost answered my question. It was about healthy expected ages. 67 for men. I was 68 yesterday.
Congratulations.
I just wondered about what I can look forward to, but
many years of a happy life. And
happy birthday,
Councillor Trumper.
It's just that on deprivation again. When I saw the map, and I did know that because we discussed this earlier in the year about how deprivation has increased in Whitby over the whole of Whitby really, and it is concerning. And when you look at we've already mentioned that Whitby and Scarborough being dueling the crown of North Yorkshire because of the amount of people that visit and the fantastic coastline, etc. But we're just not getting the resource that we need for Whitby and for Scarborough. But I do think we are overlooked, and I think there's projects that can basically change that around. But I don't think North Yorkshire Council have been taking those seriously, particularly in Whitby. And interestingly, the increase of the demographic in the different age groups, it looks like the life expectancy was it 78, 79, 78. However, the increase in demographic is basically in the older age group has increased. So does that suggest that more older people are moving into the area to retire?
There's an element of that. There'll be an element of that, but not exclusively. But certainly when we look at the movement, I think going back to Professor Chris Whitty's report, people do tend to migrate to coastal communities for retirement. So we do see some of that movement. Yeah.
So can I ask if somebody could bring us a report that compares, it's particularly Whitby we're concerned about, isn't it? So I'm not trying to minimise the deprivation in my part in the Scarborough part of the world, but what have been the significant changes that have made Whitby more deprived, so that we can get a better handle on those? Please, and I can't even speculate what they might be. It might be a combination of affordability of homes, so more people are in insecure accommodation. It could also be around fuel poverty, because of the startling increases we had in fuel costs. I do not know, and I think that's why it would be really good to understand that. Is that agreeable for everyone? Helpful? Yeah.
Chair, so just another framing of that's based on the indices of deprivation 2025, which has recently been produced, which has shown a decline in the position of Whitby, and trying to understand some of the factors in and around that.
That would be wonderful.
And I might need to enlist other colleagues across the council to do that bit of work. So I'll work with you offline about timescale and bringing some hypotheses back.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Councillor Sharma.
Just a couple of questions. I know Councillor Chance asked you to provide an average house price. I don't think that really is very illuminating. I'd prefer it if you, alongside that, you could provide a median price for housing. That might give us a better idea of how the spread is. The other thing is, there's been a lot of comment in the national media, definitely on radio, about the correlation between obesity in children and poverty. How is that impacting our area, and what are you doing to try and counteract it? Thank you.
Shall we come on to that last part in Dr. Kelly's bit? Yeah, we'll pick that up there. But can I just say that those of us who are involved in the local plan, there has been a lot of work done on the housing needs, and the house prices are easily accessible there, and we can see the changes, and there is, as always, the differential between Whitby and Scarborough, and that's reflected in the requirements for percentages of social housing, as you know. Councillor Chance. Yes, but we can circulate more. I don't think you probably need to take that as an action, Louise. I think we can easily access that. Oh, you've done it, yeah. I think we can circulate that detail around house prices, bearing in mind that a significant percentage of our population rent their accommodation anyway. Right, thank you. At last, we get on to children and young people. Thank you.
Yeah, and just wanted to make sure we always had a section on this, particularly because if you remember, not last year, but the year before, Director of Public Health annual report looked at children and young people and best start in life, and nobody more passionate to speak about this than Dr. Jill Kelly, who, if I can hand over to Jill to do the highlights of the next few slides. Thanks, Jill.
Thanks very much, Lou, and morning, everybody. Just before I go on to children and young people, just to let you know, I was actually on a webinar about the changes to the indices of multiple deprivation just last week, about the how it had all changed. And there was quite a lot of discussion around how the actual two measures aren't directly comparable, simply because they're actually measuring things in a slightly different way. And the 2025 numbers are actually including other measurements. So it's really difficult actually to be able to say that one area has become more deprived or one area has become less deprived, because you're not measuring the same thing. So hopefully that provides a little bit of reassurance, but I'm sure we can pull together something actually detailing that. But just to kind of add to that, I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware it's not the same measurement that they're doing.
I wasn't aware, so that's really helpful. Thank you.
No problem. Right, so children and young people, it has been a busy, busy year all along the coast and all across North Yorkshire. If we can go to my first slide. Oops. Down a bit. Lovely, thank you very much. So I just really wanted to touch on the huge amount of work that my Healthy Schools and Healthy Early Years Awards team have been doing. Now, what I really want to point out here is that this is a programme that is free for all publicly funded schools within North Yorkshire, all 356 of them, and we currently have around 82% of all schools actually signed up. So when we've got our figures here around the actual coastal schools that have actually achieved the awards, there are far more schools as well that have actually signed up but not actually submitted work towards any of these awards. But all schools are supported by the team in order to pull together the information required. It also shouldn't be underestimated the amount of work that it actually takes to achieve one of these awards. And when I've been at the celebration events, the amount of pride that schools, staff and children take in actually receiving their award is just lovely to see. We also, in the last year or so, have extended that into early years settings, and there are hundreds and hundreds of early years settings across North Yorkshire. So that really is starting to get going again now. And also in the last produced not just bronze, silver and gold, but gold renewal. So schools have got to really evidence how they have maintained really high standards. And there's also a new award of platinum that nobody at the coast has achieved yet, but almost no one has across the whole of the county. But that's where schools actually pick a specific area that is of interest and importance to their local school, to their local setting. For example, I think we've had one school working on climate action and another one working on online safety. So they really do pull together extra information, something that is really, really specific to their setting. The next box there is actually just a couple of examples, of some of the really excellent work. No, still up.
Oh, sorry.
You're going too quickly for me. So these are just some of the really good examples where our team has supported individual schools to achieve awards or with very, very specific things. Now, because we're lovely and green in North Yorkshire anyway, there's not very many schools who are actually able to apply for a National Education Nature Park grant. But this is something that we're encouraging Filey Juniors as well as a few other schools to do, where schools then have to go from grey to green is how it's described, of actually increasing the influence of nature within their local school setting. And then also I just included there the work that's been done with Braeburn and Graham Secondary. But honestly, the amount of local work and support that actually goes on around the team, it's all across the whole of the coastal area. It is certainly not just in these three schools. They were just really good examples that I thought I would include. Now, my next slide actually answers the councillor's question earlier. So from a couple of years ago, when our National Child Measurement Programme data did show across the county a fairly significant increase, relatively speaking, of excess weight, is particularly that very overweight proportion. In our youngest children at 4 and 5, we actually received a small amount of funding from Humber North Yorkshire ICB to actually see what we could do to counteract this. So it's actually been a very, very, almost a clever piece of work, as it were. We've engaged with local families to say, what is it that would suit you? We want to know what families think would be useful. And what we have found out, people know what's healthy, but it's actually having the time, the understanding of what to do with leftovers. How do you deal with a child who, for example, may be neurodiverse and doesn't like certain textures? And also when navigating the minefield of those early years, actually knowing portion sizes for those youngest children. So we've engaged with our local families. We have engaged with our local health determinants research collaborative to do a piece of research, a literature search for national evidence of what works. And then we had a workshop with all local stakeholders and the ICB and public health, just to actually sit around the table and say, right, what's our list of all the things where there is evidence that works and there's evidence that local people would want this. And from that, we have designed, and it's still not up and running, it's still slightly evolving, but we have designed a service, as it were, this program that will have both physical aspects, in-person aspects, as well as an online suite of resources. We will be working with local early years settings. Now, this is at the moment just Scarborough, but the point is that we're trialing it. And then what we want to do is actually expand it into other settings. When it comes to actually early years settings, we will be working on upskilling staff across the area. It's not just Scarborough, but we're actually looking at initiating or using settings where there are already cooking classes, but for older children, and training staff in those under 4 or families with children under 4. And that is going to start in Scarborough with an aim to expanding that and learning as we go along. And from that as well, we will be having better understandings of the barriers to that. We know that there is a direct link between the proportion of children with excess weight and deprivation. We know that. So we know where we need to start. And then this is hopefully a programme that we will be able to scale up across the whole of North Yorkshire. But we're starting small and learning from our initial efforts. So that's what we're doing as a result of the increased figures that we received it's just about 14 months ago now. So this is what we're putting in place, and it's still developing, but won't take too much longer to get in place. So if I can go to the next slide. Thank you very much. Now, these are just 3 really interesting pieces of work. Now, asthma-friendly schools. I will say the actual asthma-friendly school resource is available to all schools across North Yorkshire. All of the resources are on the Healthy Schools website. However, the ICB identified higher rates of prescribing of reliever inhalers in Scarborough, and therefore we're interested in putting some health inequalities funding to a local organisation to work with schools specifically at improving their approach to children with asthma within the school. And a lot of it is around improving communication with parents, and that's two-way communication and just making sure medication is easily available. And if there is a slight increase in inhaler usage, making sure that's documented and communicated. Now, the aim was to have 10 schools certified, and at the moment we have got 7 primary schools fully certified and 3 are in progress. So again, we are working specifically to something that was identified by the ICB around prescribing data. The next thing that we have is oral health promotion. Now, I have put Scarborough area because it is across the whole of Scarborough, Whitby, Filey, And I've got a whole spreadsheet of lots of settings within, well, early years settings and primary schools participating in daily brushing. Now, this is something that is advised by the government's Best Start, Giving Every Child Best Start in Life document from July. It is within NICE guidance around oral health promotion. And ultimately, this is seen as something that is really positive and does have a positive impact, particularly in more deprived areas. So we are promoting that. And in fact, myself and my team, after our Christmas lunch in a couple of weeks, we're going to the local library to put toothbrushes and toothpaste in book start bags that will be distributed to children all across North Yorkshire. So we've got a lovely team hour or so there just helping out around oral health promotion. And I know that sometimes people do say, well, how can it be fitted into the school day? And I do know of one school, I don't actually know where, that is having all the children running around at lunch. They come in after lunchtime and they all brush their teeth to the tune of the Mission Impossible theme tune. And it just sets them up for the whole afternoon. And I really wish I could be a fly on the wall for that one. That sounds wonderful. And then finally on this slide, we've got the whole school approach to mental well-being with My Happy Mind. Now, across Scarborough and Whitby for the last couple of years, we were using health inequalities funding to put My Happy Mind in 29 primary schools, it ended up being. Now, this was loved by primary schools so much that the Scarborough, Whitby, Rydell Send and School Improvement Locality Board have very generously funded My Happy Mind for the next 2 years in every primary school in Scarborough, Whitby and Rydell. Now, they recently won a King's Award for Technology, and I myself was privileged, I really use that word privileged, to go to Overdale Community Primary back in July to witness My Happy Mind in action. And I have to say, the only word I can use to describe it was a delight. It was an absolute delight. Slightly disconcerting to see 9-year-olds talking about neuroanatomy and the effects of physiology and their emotions. But what it's really doing is teaching children to just appreciate the little things about each other and themselves. So they would sit and name their own character strengths, but then be more excited to name their friends' character strengths and the things that they were grateful for, but also the things their friends were grateful for. And it really taught children to appreciate both their friends and themselves and their strengths. And we are seeing that it is improving resilience and well-being across these schools. So I'm really pleased that this is now across such a large patch. And then I really liked the quote from Woodlands Academy. If we could just go up a teensy bit, because I don't know the full quote off by heart, but it's set to become the glue that brings together everything we're already doing while adding so much more value, particularly in our context as a special school supporting children with a range of special educational needs. Now, the proof of the pudding is going to be, though, when we repeat our Growing Up in North Yorkshire survey next year, and we will be able to look at the impact within Scarborough, Whitby and Rydell of My Happy Mind and all the other efforts that we are doing along the lines of mental well-being and resilience. And then if we can go on to the next slide. So our Scarborough Teenage Pregnancy Task Force. So this is just really to show you just the sheer number of departments and organisations involved in this task force. And ultimately, the aim is to reduce the teenage pregnancy rates in Scarborough. And that will also include Whitby. I will say this is not just Scarborough, it's that coastal area. To ensure that pregnant teenagers and teenage parents are empowered and supported to achieve good health and well-being. And ultimately, this is all about as well, not just them, but the best start in life for their child. So really promoting the whole family unit and the family support there. And then we have a public health officer who is leading on this and is working directly with families across the coast. If we can just go down onto my last slide, it just shows our achievements. Practitioner, sorry. But so we have had an extension of the health inequalities funding. Like I say, we've got our practitioner for a further year. We're working with University of York around the experiences of young parents in Scarborough, and I will say that does include Whitby. And there is a strong evidence base that is developing. We have 8 young parents who are involved, and then we are also we're developing training for professionals, but very much aimed at midwives as well, around the specific needs that young parents have, because it really can be quite straining and difficult. So we are supporting people. We're linking lots of the moving parts in this system. I will say all of these health areas are full systems with so many moving parts, and it is a job and a half to bring everybody together. And so we really are developing that system. And I really apologise if you can hear my telephone going in the background. It will be a junk call. So I'm sorry if I'm a wee bit distracted there. And then finally, and this is something I feel so strongly about, that we have to ensure that young people who have a family when young are not disadvantaged in terms of qualifications and what they can achieve for the rest of their lives. And I remember myself being at medical school, and one of my fellow students actually had a young daughter. And I would hope that by developing flexible qualification routes for young people with children, we can ensure that they get the same level of qualifications and ultimately have really, really positive career experiences for the rest of their lives. Thank you very much, and I will now take questions.
Thank you. I've got one obvious one. On the Teenage Pregnancy Task Force, there's no numbers on there, Jill. And it implies that Scarborough, Whitby and Filey presumably, has a higher rate than the national and the rest of North Yorkshire. Do you have the data, or can you send us the data on that?
We can get the data to you. We don't.
Thank you.
I know who's got it, so we can get that to you, definitely.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. Has anybody got any questions for Dr. Kelly? Councillor Sharma, Sebash, and Councillor Chance, David.
Thank you for that. Just some clarification, really. You mentioned engage with local families, and you said local early year settings. I think from my experience, children have really, really grasped the idea of good food, good quality, and healthy living. The problem comes when they try and live that life, and parents have different ideas about what they should be fed, what they should drink, and so forth. I've come across this so often. Are you intervening to try and educate parents and grandparents, or is it just the school settings that you're dealing with? Because I think you've achieved that in schools. It's the parents and the grandparents who need to be taught what good food is and what good drinking is and how important water instead of fizzy drinks are. Thank you.
Absolutely. So that's why part of our program that we're developing is taking community settings where there are already cooking classes, but for older children, and training staff who are delivering those cooking classes in dealing with families with younger children, so the under 4s, so those specific things around the requirements around portion control. And one of the areas has got a garden growing in the actual setting, and so there's actually already programs of actually going and growing your own food and then using that in those cooking lessons. So some of it will be a very, very practical hands-on cooking classes around this is what good food looks like. This is the correct proportion or the portions that sizes for children under 4. And then things like leftovers. How do you then make a whole meal out of leftovers? And how do you deal with a neurodiverse child who doesn't like certain textures? How do you bend good food to comply with your child's needs? So that is going to be part of this program. And like I say, we're going to be starting small, and then depending on what we learn from what we're doing, we will be hopefully scaling up across the whole county.
Thank you. Councillor Chance.
It's really just an observation for all officers here. Can I just say that the generic use of Scarborough does cause us problems with our communities, as you're aware, and can we at least use Scarborough and Whitby? Filey doesn't fall within this area, it falls within Moulton.
But I think if we refer to Scarborough and Whitby rather than just Scarborough, it's going to save us a lot of problems.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Kelly. That was really informative as always, and look forward to getting the answers to the questions on teenage pregnancy. Who's up next, Louise?
Yeah, just to continue on. And Jill, I'm thinking maybe this time next year, with the Director of Children's Services, we might be able to feed back on some of the Best Start and Family Hub work that's just laying the tracks on. That's really important.
Well, I wish you hadn't mentioned that.
Sorry, I'm not meant to.
No, you can mention it, but I think this can, we might add it to our work plan, if that's all right. That would be the best way to address it before I get on my high horse.
It's definitely been led with Children and Young People Services. So our new incoming Director of Children's Services will not thank me for just giving her a job ahead of not even meeting her. Thank you. It is an important next piece. Thank you. So I'm not going to perhaps go too deep into the health protection piece other than to say, you would expect me to say winter vaccines, absolutely really important, making sure eligible frontline health and care workers are vaccinated to support and protect the people that they're working with. Cohorts and eligibility has changed a little bit this year, so people who are eligible should have been contacted, but of course all the information is there. It's not bespoke to this area committee, but it's really important to encourage vaccine uptake, because we know in certain parts of this area people might not come forward to get the vaccine to the level that we want them to, and it's always about having a good conversation with people for me to explain it and to talk it through and to allay any fears that people might have. So really wanting just to, as you would expect, promote that as part of a package of things across the winter, because we do have seasonal health strategy, which we work with partners on to make sure that people get through the colder months. And then just making sure that, as I've said in the next slide, please, St. John, that you're aware that our frontline teams in health and care who are supporting perhaps people with vulnerabilities and complex need are absolutely being offered the flu vaccine. And then just moving down to the Scarborough Inequalities group, it is Scarborough and Whitby Inequalities group, because it does absolutely cover the whole of the ACC area. We do have this group that I think Dora spoke to last year when she was on the call. Dora will be coming back to join the team following maternity leave after Christmas, who did actually instigate and set this group up with partners. But you'll see just a range of things that we've been doing around promoting sort of cancer screening awareness, vaccinations, making sure that we look at the data and think, where do we need to do more, or get messages out into communities. And of course, always being willing to talk about the issues, being willing to talk about people's concerns, understand their issues. And so this group, I think, is there on a multi-agency basis, really trying to promote and look at areas where uptake might not be as high. So just to give you assurance that we're being vigilant on that. Sometimes with health protection issues, they are sensitive and confidential, and we work on the issues behind the scenes and get the job done, hopefully to protect the population. Members, you'll know that, because sometimes I do speak to you about particular issues that may be bubbling up in different communities. So rest assured on the health protection section, it isn't just about immunisation and screening, although that's really, really important. It is about protecting the health of the population, working with multi-agency partners to make sure that we try to do that in a really meaningful way, which was why, very sadly, when we had the fires in up on Langdale and wildfire, Public Health were part of the team that responded. And of course, our concern was to make sure that the public got the right advice, the advice that was supported by the UK Health Security Agency, and tried to keep an eye on whether we saw any increase in people attending health services. So I just wanted to reassure you that whilst you may not see it every day in action, it is hopefully in action when we need to respond, and that Public Health will always be around that local resilience forum table, responding, giving advice where appropriate, and making sure that we try to get the most evidence-based messages out to the public, and to be there in recovery as well, ensuring that the messages that are there to support people in the longer term. So just wanted to sort of say that, because you might not think of us as a natural partner always being there in the response to incidents, but we absolutely always think on what does this mean about the public's health, what is the risk, what is the threat, how can we support and mitigate, and make sure you've got the best advice as councillors to be able to advise your local communities, and always get in touch with us. We're more than happy to do that. So I wasn't going to say much more on health protection, because I think we have that every year, and hopefully it's an assurance piece. So then just thinking about coastal health improvement. So our smoking rates on the coast tend to be a bit higher than the rest of the county. However,
We do have a Living Well smoke-free service. We've got the tobacco and vapes bill going through as a bill going through Parliament as we speak. But we have had for many years a Living Well smoke-free stop smoking service to help people to stop smoking, and we have had additional money from the government to really bolster that as part of the work to have a smoke-free generation. Our service performs well compared to other services nationally, and our conversion rate of people who then go on to quit is pretty strong. So I just wanted to give you assurance that we do have that service. It is absolutely there to support people, and you know, smoking is never good for you. It always has the potential to cause you harm, and so we absolutely keep focused on that, and we will always continue to do that in public health until we see that harm reduced. Or indeed eradicated, which would be a public health ambition.
Can I just interrupt you and ask a question? So we talk about people setting quit dates, and it is a great service. What about people who start smoking? Is it nearly always younger people?
It's a mixture, really. Obviously, some younger people do start smoking, and we will support them. But some people have been smoking for many, many years and have attempts to quit, and sometimes they start smoking again, and we're always there to help people no matter what. If you stop and then you start again, absolutely come back and we will try and support you. So irrespective of your age, the service is there. Please come and see us.
Councillor Chance?
Are we doing anything on vapes?
So my public health advice is, if you don't smoke, don't vape. Vapes are a harm reduction tool to help people to stop smoking, and we do have them as part of our stop smoking offer. Which is well managed, and we reduce your reliance on a vape. It is a harm reduction tool from a public health perspective. I could probably bring a whole other discussion on vaping, and of course we know that the tobacco and vapes bill is including vapes and marketing to children, which of course from a public health point of view we wouldn't think was a good idea at all. So there is lots going on, as you know, in the kind of national political space on the tobacco and vapes bill. But ultimately, my core public health message is: if you don't smoke, don't vape. It's a harm reduction tool.
Thank you. Sorry, did you have that? Sorry, Heather, I missed it. Sorry, I apologise. Councillor Phillips.
Have we got on to movement yet? Because, thank you. I'll ask my question then.
You can ask your question now if you want.
Thank you, Chair. It's very important that we understand that it's not from the high levels, you know, the clouds of North Yorkshire, that health decisions can be made. They can be made very locally. I'm off this afternoon to open a trim trail in my division, which has been paid for by the parish council with support from Section 106 money. So they've made the decision to make health more accessible for the residents locally by doing that. So it doesn't need to be a mass plan. It doesn't need to come from central government. You can have your own little contribution to making your residents healthier. I think they're expecting me to swing off a bar or something, but I might just have to decline.
Can we have photographs, please?
Absolutely agree. The next set of slides are actually about our health improvement from a movement perspective, and I'm not saying it's physical activity here. I'm calling it moving more, and that's to make sure that people know that moving more is a good thing, and sedentary lifestyles, and trying to understand the impact of when we don't move as much as perhaps we should be moving, however that looks, and of course relative to people's ability to move, but trying to support people to move more is a really powerful thing. So Laura has joined us on the call, and Laura is actually jointly working between the council and North Yorkshire Sport. So the information is there in the slides. We're really keen to make sure that we have a framework that we can describe how people move more. There's physical health benefit to movement as well as mental health and wellbeing benefit. We also have a service within our leisure offer, and we're really keen as a public health team to make sure we support our leisure colleagues to make sure that public health outcomes or health outcomes are part of all that we try to do as a council in terms of our leisure offer. But I'll just, if I can, Chair, just invite Laura in case there's anything in particular on her slide she wants to highlight, notwithstanding that members have had the slides, Laura.
It was just kind of what Louisa said, how important movement is, and people finding their own joyful movement that will create those lifelong habits. Starting from the early years, we're looking at right through to looking at active aging and ensuring that our places have opportunities for people to move throughout their life. So yeah, just more joyful movement for everyone.
Absolutely. Thanks, Laura. And then we do have some information about our Healthy Weight programme, Healthy You, it's called Healthy You Service. And we did launch this on the 1st of January this year gone as part of our North Yorkshire Council Leisure offer. And we have some good statistics on this, although notwithstanding it's quite early doors with the service, but really wanted to make sure that the broader health outcomes are kind of included in being part of that service. So it's not all about weight, it's about actually having a more healthy approach to life, which hopefully might benefit people to help them to maintain a healthy weight. So we're really trying to think about the focus of the service and how that works alongside the rest of the Council's leisure services closely with Joe Ireland and the team. So Laura, I don't think there's anything you want to say about the actual service itself now.
Just that over obviously with the local government reorganisation and trying to bring those additional services in, they are now looking at how they can create a more equitable service across the whole of North Yorkshire. So what is available in Harrogate is also available on the coast and also available in some of our most rural areas as well. And that work is going on between interactions with community as well as with public health and those within the active North Yorkshire service. And there's regular connections each week between public health and active North Yorkshire, where we keep in touch with what each team is doing.
Thank you. And not to spoil the alert of what the next Director of Public Health Annual Report might be on for next year, I'm really wanting to focus on how we move more across this fantastic county and make opportunities.
Can I ask a question on that then? So moving more for everybody, but I've been asking a question about play areas and in some of our built-up areas, access to a usable, safe and sometimes lit play area is a challenge. I'm told by the Parks Department that they're going to do a play strategy, but just wondered what Public Health's view was on that and how involved you are in that work.
Yeah, Laura, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I haven't had any direct involvement in that myself at the moment, but I know conversations are underway. I had a quick chat with someone yesterday about who they are best to speak to in public health around supporting that strategy work and making sure that our young people have access to safe and inclusive areas. They are so important, particularly where families may not be able to afford paid activity, so your football and dance classes and things like that. Having access to these green spaces and play spaces is just really, really important. So yeah, we are aware of it, and we will hope to be able to use some of our own knowledge to inform how that play strategy shapes up.
Thank you, Laura. That's really helpful. Councillor Trumper.
Yeah, thank you. I think play areas are really important for our young people, but with the demographic getting older, what kind of infrastructure do we have for the older people? Yeah, grown-up play areas. Yeah, but you see them in other countries.
Not to SEMA.
Well, SEMA. But like I say, I mean, what infrastructure is going to be put in place for the older people?
So it's at the back end of the slide deck on the Healthy Ageing report from last year, the Director of Public Health Annual Report, we did want to make sure that we were working across the whole of the authority and beyond with partners to address exactly those kind of issues. And what was fantastic, if you remember from last year's report, was the fantastic photos that everybody sent in. And there was about 130, 140 by memory photographs of people across North Yorkshire who considered themselves to be able to submit a photograph as part of a Healthy Ageing report. And they were on seesaws and doing amazing things. Now, I know that's not the case for everybody in the county, but it's a really well-made point, because actually movement and making sure that we keep our strength, core strength as we age, and muscle strength is really key. So as part of that Healthy Ageing report, at the back of there, we had a maximising opportunities to increase physical activity amongst older people as one of the recommendations. So we're pushing on that, and especially with the Age Well on the Coast work, but really important. But the photographs told some fantastic stories cares about what's already happening. We just need to do more of it probably.
Councillor Chance?
Yeah, it's just, I'm quite happy to send you photographs of parks in West Yorkshire that all have adult gyms, outdoor gyms in the park. And I think that's a brilliant idea that we should be looking at.
So maybe I should be saying to parks, they should extend it to a play strategy for all ages.
I would sorry, I'm just going to come in there. I would really advocate for play across all ages. I think it's part of that joyful movement. The more joy you find in movement, the more likely you are to do it for longer. So I would completely advocate for
fabulous. Thank you.
Play for everyone.
Thank you, Laura. I'm mindful of it's only because we've got colleagues from the police, but I'm mindful of time. It was more directed at councillors, really. Perhaps we should stop asking questions until we get to the end of a section, because we get a bit carried away with ourselves. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, Chair, the rest of the slides, I did ask Matthew if he'd like to have just been in the session, because last year I think we included information about the SWIFT work in our migrant communities, but members may be already close enough to that information that if you want to ask questions, Matthew very kindly said he would come along, but I think maybe members in this committee might be familiar with this work anyway, but we wanted to include it.
I'm in Scarborough, so some of us are very familiar.
Yeah, but not everybody.
Not everybody. No.
So if there's anything on the SWIFT piece, then I'm sure we'd be happy to take a question, and if not, we'll note it and then move on. That's okay.
Is that all right with everyone?
Unless anybody wants to. Okay.
Yeah, and I got Councillor Ritchie probably got my question actually.
It was only to stress the importance of the continuation of this work and to thank everyone involved in it's incredibly important piece of work that you all do, and long may it continue.
Thank you. It was.
And then the next couple of slides, there's a men's health strategy, which I think has just recently been launched, which my team are just looking at and looking at the opportunities in that for what we're already doing, but again, working in partnership. But we just highlighted a mindfulness programme that was funded again through Health and Equalities work. And I think there are other things in Whitby that are similar to this in terms of support for men's mental health and wellbeing, but we will be looking at the men's health strategy and be able to bring you more on that next year. We also had the women and girls, the women's health strategy that I think members were briefed on, that we had a big conference last year and tried to understand the views of women and girls. I do actually have the breakdown of what the response from this area constituency geography is, so we can send that back to committee if you're interested, just how many people in the responses of that 1,600 responses from our area did respond, and it was a good number, so I was pleased to see that, and a good spread across all parts of the area committee. And so really important that we keep focused on the women and girls health. And then the final slides, which I wasn't proposing to go through, because you will see this as well with the Director of Public Health annual report coming out in a week or two's time, is to show that we don't lose track of those recommendations and we try to keep on them. And I think we've covered a few of them this morning. We have obviously got that real focus on healthy ageing. It does really matter to the demography of this area, as well as the rest of our county, as equally did our Children and Young People's report, as you've heard so passionately from Jill. But just to give you assurance that we do track, we do ask the questions. I do want to know that the recommendations haven't just sat there and everybody think, well, there's an annual report written and a statutory duty done. It really matters to me and the team that we follow up and we encourage partners to make sure that we're actually making the best of the recommendations as set out in that statutory report. It does cover a whole range of issues associated with healthy ageing, not just our physical and mental health and well-being as we age, but also working, keeping at work, falls prevention, and lots of other issues that matter to people as they age. And I am part of the 50 plus group, so I'm entitled to comment on this. I think from a personal point of view, I should declare an interest, although I didn't put an age on the report, remember.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to bring a question that requires some outside of the box thinking. I wrote to Louise earlier in the week about exploring Nordic-style small snow clearing machines as a preventative intervention, given the very high local costs of slips and falls, both for the NHS and adult social care. Would public health be willing to review whether a partnership approach, that's public health, highways and the NHS, could assess the feasibility and cost effectiveness of such a scheme? It seems to fit strongly with the prevention agenda And I welcome your view on whether this could be explored through existing falls prevention work. Thinking outside the box, we've kind of seen that today with St Celia's and St Catherine's regarding the work that they're doing, and a private business also in Eastfield with regards to the Eastfield Medical Centre. So I'm asking you, can we start to think outside the box, bring these things together and do preventative actions? Thank you.
I am happy to take that away and bring a group of colleagues together just to have a look at the evidence of what you shared with me earlier in the week. Thank you, Councillor Moore. Because falls prevention really matters, doesn't it? I'm not saying this is the solution or committing to anything. And certainly the public health grant funding has quite strict terms and conditions in and around of what we can spend it on. But from an evidence-based review and having a think about, is this a intervention that might work and serve the public? Part of the job of my team is to go and think about the evidence base and check and look at literature reviews and understand whether or not we would recommend things to members or not, as the case might be. So I will take the job card away, pull other colleagues together, because it actually links to my very final slide, which is around the Health Determinants Research Collaborative. And I just wanted to leave members with the view that, or for you to know that we have actually received some funding through the 5 years worth of funding through the National Institute for Health Research. There are 30, I think, health determinant collaboratives around the country. This is about helping the council to be more research active and looking at how we use research to help to address health inequalities. It needs to fit within our corporate strategy, our MTFS, our whole approach to how we use research to inform our decision making and inform our practice. And we're into about year 2 of the 5 years, and it's starting to bear its fruit. So I just want members to be aware of that, because it is about how we as a council are research active, really encourage people to think about the evidence, really think about the opportunities to ask those questions, well-framed questions about how we might reduce health inequalities, starting with a hypothesis and checking it out and working it through. And we do have a partnership in this between the universities of Hull and York, and it is great that we have received this level of funding, because not all councils have got this, and how we use this and how we use this to address health inequality. So maybe next year I'll be in a better position to bring you some tangible examples about how we've used this Determinants Research Collaborative to benefit health inequalities. If it's about health inequalities, then no better place than this area committee for Scarborough and Whitby that clearly, going back to the beginning with the deprivation indices, we do need to keep focused on.
So we are all concerned about the deprivation indices, but I'll be positive, it's an opportunity. So if there's some novel ideas, and I appreciate that, Councillor Moore, then yes, I think that would be really good. Thank you. Has anybody got any last questions for Louise? John, Councillor Ritchie, sorry.
Just a quick comment on Richard, because it is a great idea. And when you think back to that, one of those first slides we were shown about the change in demography, a 20% increase in number of, is it 65 to 85 people living in North Yorkshire over the next few years. We need to take looking at that evidence-based approach to how we spend resources. And if the evidence says, well, yes, we can, I'm not convinced at the end of the day that you'll get the health service to agree to invest in a snow or ice clearing machine, but that's the way we need to be thinking.
Can I just say, and because Matthew is here, when Pomosh was set up, we'd identified a problem as a council. We got the council, the health service, the police, fire and crime commissioner, is that it? And the county council to all invest, because it was a problem we all shared. So I do think there are doors open to that. We do use Section 75 money to work collaboratively with the health service to reduce duplication, but work more closely together. So don't say nay just yet. I'm not
saying nay. I don't know whether the figures will stack up.
No, but a willingness to engage is always a start, isn't it? So thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone online. I really appreciate your time and your depth, knowledge and enthusiasm in helping us negotiate this.
And members, thank you for your interest in the work that we do. And anybody have any questions for me and the team, we'll always answer them as best as we can. If we don't know the answer, we'll tell you that straight as well. And recognising the different communities that have been served in this committee, and we'll get to that granular detail. And I will respond to the members of the public that asked us questions yesterday, Councillor Swanwick. I shall do that by Monday. Thank you.
Thank you. John, could you just turn your mic off? Fabulous, thank you. Thank you. So we're on to item 9 now, and apologies for being a little delayed. So we are joined by PC Philip Coyne and PCSO Chris Unsworth from the Rural Policing Task Force. If you'd like to come here, I think that would be better. I keep my eye on you, but it gives you a microphone, so that's what matters really. Is he playing shy? So this is an annual report. If you remember last year, we took it as a paper and we noted it, but it's really important we keep in touch with it. And I know that some of you who have more rural areas are very concerned about this and really appreciate the update. So thank you very much for your time in attending.
Been passed. Thank you. Yes. As you can see from the graphs, overall rural crime is on the decline. We are enjoying a little bit of a grapple with last year's stats at the moment. 24 and 25, it's a little bit tit for tat. But since 2020, overall, it has come down. What's important for us to understand is whether that's because it's not being reported or whether it's because it's not happening. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions anyone might have about what's in the report.
Thank you. And Councillor Moore's hand was up first, and he's also Councillor Broadbent, but yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. I want to raise an issue relating to Boxing Day and New Year hunt meets. These events continue to generate public concern across North Yorkshire, and the same problems appear year after year. We see untrained marshals stopping traffic on the public highway, road obstructions, hounds and horses moving through crowds, alcohol being served before riding, and no visible evidence that organisers have applied for the required legal permissions, either a temporary traffic regulation order or a Town Police Clauses Act order for road closures. As you'll know, the Council has a duty under Section 130 of the Highways Act to protect the public's right to use a highway, and events of this scale require proper authorisation and safety management. I've written to NYC Highways about this, as they have repeatedly said it is an operational matter, but public safety cannot be left to assumption. Given continuing concerns that so-called trail hunting is still being used as a cover for illegal fox hunting in parts of the country, and given repeated reports of hounds causing nuisance and harm, can you, as the Rural Crime Task Force, confirm what proactive checks are made ahead of hunt meets to ensure that organisers have applied for the correct permissions and traffic management measures? How the task force monitors hunt activity on the day to ensure compliance, both with wildlife legislation and highway safety law, and whether the task force considers that its current enforcement approach is sufficient, given the recurring issues and widespread public concern.
Can I just make a comment, Councillor Moore?
You can.
And I know this is a thing that's really close to your heart. That is the sort of question that is best submitted in advance. Because I think it's really difficult for people on the ground to answer that. So if you have any comments you wish to make, a more detailed answer, I would just please bear that in mind, everybody, for visitors who come, that if it's not something that's on the report, please give them the heads up beforehand. I really appreciate any insights you can give us.
No, that's fine. You are right, trail hunting, it does get used as a cover, and it's particularly a point that's close to my heart. Like I don't agree with fox hunting, and we do see trail hunting used as a cover quite often. The issue that we have as a specific task force regarding Boxing Day and New Year's Day is that we're not funded to work bank holidays. So we tend to be in the urban areas of Scarborough or Whitby on Boxing Day and on New Year's Day, as we all know they're big drinking days. So that tends to be where we are. As far as I'm aware, no notice is given to us advance of a hunt. It doesn't need to be, it's not required to be by law. They are allowed to just hunt there on their own lands, and there's nothing we can do to stop them doing that. And then, yes, usually it goes off a trail and it crosses somebody else's land. And I have dealt with cases where fox hunts have gone tearing through people's gardens and literally caused thousands of pounds worth of damage, and there's seldom we can do about it. It's a summary-only offence, fox hunting, which means it's not recordable. After 6 months, it's not enforceable. I do take your points that you're saying about Boxing Day and New Year's Day specifically. What we can do is we can reach out to the hunts in the area and ask them for what they're doing and where they're doing it. In terms of enforcing highways, we respond to it the same way you do. When the roads are blocked, we get a call and we have to go. What I would say is that if we know that a fox hunt is going to happen, it's best to let us know, assume that we don't know, and to inform us. I'm quite happy to open a line of communication with you if we can arrange to get your contact details, and then we can start building towards this, because fox hunting is a problem in this county, as far as I'm concerned, and it needs to be dealt with. Is that all right?
Thank you. That's a very helpful response. Yeah. Thank you very much. Councillor Broadbent, Eric.
Yes, thank you, Chair. A more simple question, but just as important. You mentioned that the stats are, we are improving on rural.
Yeah.
Mischief, as I'll put it like that.
Yeah.
But the national figures say that the figures are going up for stealing of livestock.
Yes.
And I was just wondering, are you getting plenty of help with more equipment, more men, dealing with this important issue?
It's quite ironic that you mentioned that, because it was an issue that was brought up to us this morning in our morning briefings. We've, as a team, just discovered that livestock thefts are what we refer to as being closed at source when they're being reported to the police. There are obviously ways to keep track of your livestock in terms of numbers and things like that, so that we can tell when they come back up, when they're tagged or chipped or however. And we've asked that we now have a question set for when farmers or livestock owners are reporting that, so that we can keep better tabs on it, because we don't feel that our stats as a team are truly reflective of what's going on out there in terms of livestock theft. Because it does happen. It happens more than people think it does, especially sheep. They seem to be the ones that goes. Yeah, in this day and age, it's still like sheep rustling is still quite a problem for rural communities. And there has definitely been a lax, and whether it's just our control room who are based in York not really accepting it as being a serious issue as it is or not, I don't know. But it is something as a team that we are now looking to address so that we can record it better.
Thank you.
All right.
Councillor Sharma.
Thank you, Chair. In your report, you mentioned rural task force are no longer recording domestic abuse incidents, and they're being covered by somebody else.
Correct.
Is that a sideways movement, or is it downgrading it, or is it upgrading it?
I would say that it's upgrading it. So domestic abuse, violence against women and girls in general, is much more of an issue, a prevalent issue, not just locally but nationally. It's something that the police across the whole country take very seriously. So domestic abuse requires a more specific and special set of skills to be addressed properly. We, as a rural task force, obviously we're focused more on rural crimes. Taking us into having to manage a domestic situation and investigate that fully, that requires a more amount of time than we could really do justice to it, because we're a proactive unit that needs to be elsewhere. So by having it dealt with by a response or investigation hub, which is a more targeted unit, they're able to do more work, and they can attend the safeguarding meetings, they can do the follow-through work that's required. They have people in those departments that are specifically designed to sit in safeguarding meetings, UMARACs and things like that. So that's why it's gone to them. It's not a sideways move, it's just to give it the priority that it needs.
Just a second question. In the list that you provide here, animals and wildlife crime, does that include raptor crime, where birds of prey are being targeted? I know North Yorkshire has a big problem with it. I just wondered how it was proceeding and whether those figures are part of that, or it's a completely separate item.
As far as I'm aware, birds fall within animal and wildlife crime. It is that, and we do have a problem with it. It's a very difficult problem to solve. It's pheasantry that tends to lead to more of it, the illegal trapping and destruction of birds. We do have a couple of quite high-profile cases that are on the go. The RSPB are much better at it than we are in terms of investigating. We're held back by things like Ripper and things like that. So it's really difficult for us to set up cameras and watch somebody catch a bird without having the appropriate level of authority. But it is included in those stats, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Phillips, Heather.
Thank you. I attend my parish councils, and the data we're given each month is in quite a different way.
Okay.
And the one issue that does come up quite a lot is violence against the person.
Yeah.
And I'd just like some reassurance for my residents that I've tried to explain it by hurty words on Facebook and things like that can be part of that statistic. So can you reassure us that it isn't becoming more violent in the rural areas, such as Northstead and Ramshill and Newby? And that it is just a different way of things being expressed. Thank you.
Yeah, so from my experience, certainly on the front line, and I do a fair bit of response police work as well as the rural police work, and I cover, my area would be Reeton up to Castleton, which is obviously quite a spread. And I certainly don't think that it's become more violent in rural areas. I think there are a lot more hurty words that get thrown around, offensive language, whether that be racially aggravated or aimed at sexual orientations and things like that. But those kinds of offences do happen, and they do get recorded as violence against the person. People can be offended a lot easier than maybe they were 20 years ago, and it's more likely to be recorded as a crime. But I don't think it's becoming more violent in terms of actual physical threat. That's not something that I'm overly concerned about.
Thank you. Councillor Chance. David?
Thank you. I would be interested to know what the split is. I mean, this is generically Scarborough again, and it would be interesting to know what the split is between sort of the Whitby area and the southern area.
Yeah.
And particularly from my point of view, because I cover Danby and Castleton and around that area, and I'm well aware of the cross-border rural crime. I'm well aware of the quad problems, and also the abuse and violence that's hurled at people who've got cameras on their buildings and things like that. Yeah. So it would be interesting to see what the split of these figures is between those two areas.
Okay. What I can tell you from them is it is predominantly that area. Obviously, it does come down to Scarborough and Whitby, and it even includes Filey as well, in terms of how we look at it. But most of our rural crime for this area is over that way. There's a little bit more out of Hambleton and Rydale, but obviously they're covered different ways. Filey sort of blessed in that it's right next door to the Wolds, and that's allegedly the best place in the country for hare coursing and poaching. So people tend to just move through it. A lot of our poachers from Eastfield in Scarborough tend to go south, whereas we have the same problem that the Humberside have up in the North Yorkshire moors, in that people from Cleveland come south to us. So a lot of it is cross-border crime, which again is difficult, and they get dealt with on both sides of the border. So it becomes difficult in terms of crime recording and even keeping tabs on. But what we do have is a strong network with Cleveland. We share a Microsoft Teams page with them, and every day when we come on, we share information of who's moving across and where. We do work quite closely with them. We have a radio channel that we can both use when we're in those areas. But it is mainly there, but that is mainly the focus of our patrols as well. Whenever I'm on active patrol, that is where we will go to, is that area, Danby specifically.
Yeah.
Can I just say I would compliment you on the cooperation between Cleveland and yourselves now. I mean, I can remember when Cleveland weren't interested.
Yeah.
And North Yorkshire were fighting a losing battle once they went over the border.
No,
but it's good to see that there's been a number of recoveries of quads and things like that.
Yeah.
Can I ask for a future report that we can separate out a little bit?
Yeah, I certainly can. Yeah.
I know it'd be this time next year, but
no, that's fine.
Now.
Yeah.
That would be really helpful. Thank you. Councillor Seston, Tom.
Thank you, Chair. There's quite a big case in Oxfordshire, I believe, of a massive illegal waste dump that hit national headlines recently. I'm wondering if we have any issues surrounding sort of illegal waste dumping or that flight event. I know it's sort of civil, but in some cases, obviously, I think in Oxfordshire, a man has been arrested for that, so it is sort of criminal as well. I'm wondering if we have an issue with that and if there's any measures to address it.
I mean, it certainly is an offence. If you look at places of areas of outstanding national beauty, the North Yorkshire moors, I would personally take it as more of a civil offence. If I was to catch somebody fly tipping, I wouldn't pass it off as a civil offence. I would do my utmost to deal with it there and then. It isn't something that we've seen a lot of. I'll be honest with you. I think residentially wise, it is looked after well. If anything, it tends to be hunts that dump things like dead birds. We do see a bit of that going on. Boxes will come and peel them away, but it's still not great to have 3 bin bags full of pheasants or grouse just dumped at the side of the road. But it's not a massive issue. Certainly nothing on the scale of what we've seen down in Oxfordshire. I've not received any complaints. We have active WhatsApp groups. I'm not aware of anybody reporting anybody tipping anything. But it's something that we always keep an eye out for.
Thank you. Right, I've got Councillor Pearson as the last question, so this is your final call. That's it, you are the last question.
Absolutely. It's back to the quads, really. I noticed June, there was quite high.
Yes.
And then, again, it's starting to pick up in November again, and I know there's been a few more. Well, there was one a couple of days ago in Glaisdale. Where it's got 0, is that because the person who comes round and nicks these quads was in jail?
Well, it's funny you say that because it could be. It could very well be that. Whether it's just that June and July, we tend to see a drop off in those kinds of crimes because it's lighter for longer. So there's much more daylight out, and then obviously when it gets darker again, you can almost feel it in your bones sometimes if it's a dark winter night and it's foggy and there's heavy wind or something like that that's going to mask the noise. You're almost guaranteed that something's going to go, and no one's going to know that it's gone until it's too late. But in those late evenings when it's light, people can see very far on those moors. They are very open places, so you do get much of a drop off that time of year.
Can I just come back about?
You certainly can.
Really, it's about the rural watches.
Yes.
I'm on 2 of them.
Okay.
So I'm on certainly the Whitby one, which I do a lot. But whenever we are out, there's no crime.
Yeah.
Now, we do start to wonder whether that's because they're monitoring our systems.
Right. So you think there's one amongst you, so to speak?
Well,
Fifth column.
yeah, well, I've always said it's the local person who's actually doing it. But and we're just worried about the fact that we're not wasting our time, but they know that we're out.
Yeah.
So nothing happens. Nothing happens.
It depends on the motive of those watches, those groups, and same on my patrols. Now, obviously, I joined this job to play cops and robbers, and I'd love nothing more than chasing one down the road at 100 mile an hour and a foot chase and getting them in handcuffs and whatever. But ultimately, our goal is to stop crime happening. We don't want to be responding to crime that has happened. We want crime to not happen. So if no crime's happening when those patrols are happening, I would say that is a good thing. Obviously, the more patrols you've got, the less likely it is that it's going to happen. And it can seem futile. I certainly have that myself when I'll patrol for a few nights and that there won't be a job and you think, well, what's the difference? But every car you've driven past is a potential bandit, so to speak. And if your presence there has stopped that crime happening, it's very hard to monitor that and measure that. And what happens is that the more you do it, the less crime happens. And then everyone starts to take their eye off the ball thinking, well, there's not a problem there. So the funding starts drying up and the resources move away. And then all of a sudden you're back to square one and there'll be a massive spike and it'll be a huge problem and everyone will be scrambling to get on top of it. So I would say keep on with those groups. It's a good thing that you're out. If crime isn't happening, then that's a good thing.
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time.
No worries.
Really appreciate the fullness of your responses.
All right.
And we'll see you again, I'm sure. Thank you very much indeed.
Can I get some contact details? We said we got a card. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, we're on to item 10, which is the work programme. The first item of which is to pick up any new issues raised in an earlier part of the agenda. I have 1.5. I've got 2, but I'm not sure. Anyway, so my first one is, should we add a proposed tourism tax to our work plan? It's a little early because we're on a 16-week consultation about the legislative framework. The mayor can then choose or not to operate one, and then there would have to be some local consultation. Councillor Phillips.
I am quite concerned about this whole consultation process, etc., because I know many of you around this table remember the ill-fated destination bid, and I'm just concerned that we need to be super all over this, because I do not want something to fail and it to be perceived that it's we're napping. We've not been all over it.
Okay, I'll take that as a vote to put that on our work plan, and we will have an internal discussion how best to progress that in a timely manner. The other thing that occurred to me, but I'm not sure, is after we had the petition and it was clear that although it's this council's intent to examine speed limits outside schools, it's taking some time, whether we would like a review of the speed limits across all the schools in our area coming to us. Yeah. Councillor Phillips, you're the only person not nodding at me. Do you want to think about that while I ask Councillor Seston something, because he's got his hand up?
On the point of speed limits outside schools, it's possible to look at road safety in general, because in Eastfield in particular, like Brayburn School, is a very narrow street at the best of times, and parents are obsessed with, I will drop my kid at the gate.
Okay.
And it's getting up and down there. There's people parking everywhere. It's generally mayhem. I think
that's a good refinement. I've got issues with people who persist in parking on zigzag lines when it's clearly an offence. Councillor Phillips.
I see this as a good idea, but I think you need to be mindful of the work being done by the Deputy Mayor on this, as she has gone public promising things that we may not have the ability to deliver.
Well, should we ask the Deputy Mayor to come and talk to us about?
Maybe that would. That's why I was frowning. I was just bridging the memory.
We'd be happy with that as well. Okay, is that all right with that? So those were my two that came up during the course of the meeting. Has anybody got anything else that came up in the meeting? No. And then has anybody got anything else they want to add to the work plan? I know Councillor Swanwick does.
Sorry, I don't fit in all your categories, but this is, I think, quite an important issue. It relates to the plans for cemeteries in Scarborough and Whitby. I have raised this with you, Chair, because I'm aware that there is work going on, and I've made inquiries with officers about the work that's going on, and I understand that there's proposals afoot for a capital bid to increase the provision of cemeteries in both Scarborough and Whitby. And I think this is something that we should be looking at as an area committee. So I'm grateful that the clerk has scheduled a briefing next week, I think it is, isn't it? Which will be very helpful. But I still think it really should come to this committee at some point. The difficulty, I understand, is the timing, because there is a process going on for approval of capital bids, which I have to say I'm not entirely clear as to how that works and what's the schedule of it is. And we need to try and fit it in, I think, into our area committee such that we can potentially influence the outcome rather than just have information about what's happened after the event.
So if the capital bid is coming from this council, we all have the opportunity to influence that when we get involved in our budget discussions and at the budget presentation in February. So we'll check next week what the process is. I think you're right in terms of timing for the area committee, because, of course, we will meet on the 2nd of March, which is after North Yorkshire's budget. So we'll add it to the work plan, absolutely, and we'll find out what their time scale is. But it might be that following our briefing next week, we all choose to influence in whichever ways are available to us around that. Has anybody got anything else they wish to add to our work plan other than that? Right, so the next any other business which I'm not aware of? I don't think you can, Roberta. My note says legislation prohibits the discussion of business not on the agenda. Did you want? I think. Yeah, no, I think so. I think Councillor Chance wants to say something.
I was just going to say, we have all responded, but Andrew hasn't been in that role for 26 years. He's only been in that role for a much shorter period than that. Before that, he was the road safety officer. Yeah, I mean, I've responded to Andrew. I think everyone probably has.
Okay, so then I propose that we record a vote of thanks to Andrew for his service, but also his frankness, honesty and timeliness in addressing our responses and in responding to our queries, because he was incredibly knowledgeable, and you didn't have to waste 5 minutes explaining the issue, did you? Because he's right, in which case our next meeting is on March the 2nd. It will be, as you decided last meeting, be held in Whitby. It is a very full agenda, and that is because issues around the harbours and the Port Safety Marine Code were not available to be heard today. So we will be providing lunch, but please be prepared for a longer meeting, and we will refine the agenda as we are best able. Councillor Chance.
Can I suggest, Chair, that if it's necessary, you convene another meeting and split the agenda?
Well, we agreed that we would have lunch and carry on till past 2-3 o'clock. Once we've got the agenda and we've got confirmed attendees, because quite often there's a bit of flux, we can take a view on that. But we're already having a special meeting, as you heard earlier, on bathing water quality, and it is very difficult to get additional meetings into the corporate calendar. So we'll just see where we go with that. But as Vice Chair, you'll have some influence on that when we have our mid-cycle briefing and we know where we're going. Thank you all for your time today. Thank you all for your insightful questions. It's that time of year, so best wishes for the festive season and a peaceful new year for everyone.